Thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar. We are pretty excited to bring this to you. We have Jim and Mary Kay McBrayer with us today. Mary Kay will be on the back end monitoring chat and just making sure all your questions get answered, and Jim is our presenter. Jim started his career in sales for PPG, and his claim to fame as a salesperson is selling the largest account in the company history. So after rising to the sales director, he was responsible for 150 sales representatives and a dozen regional sales managers, and he was appointed to PPG sales leadership team. He left PPG after 20 years to pursue his passion of helping others optimize their sales effectiveness by launching his own sales training company, McBrayer Associates. So Jim is certainly someone who knows his stuff, and we're really excited to have him here today. Jim, I'll turn this on over to you. Oh wait, before I do that, sorry, one quick note of housekeeping. We are going to be monitoring chat, so if you have questions, feel free to post them in there, and you can also raise your hand once we get to the Q&A session, and we'll unmute you then, so you can ask your questions direct. And now, Jim, I will actually turn this over to you.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for taking about an hour of your time out of your life to be with us today. My intent today is to bring massive value to you guys. I hope when you walk away from this and say that that was so good, I've been willing to pay for it, but there won't be a charge for it. But that's the intent. I hope you're going to get something from it. The name of the webinar today is Strategies to Avoid the One and Done Business Model and Create a Recurring Revenue. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of what that means and what it probably means to you as well. So usually when you're starting something like this, I try to put myself in your guys' shoes, and you're probably thinking, am I in the right place? Is this going to be a good use of my time? So there's a couple of places I want to talk to begin with. I've had a couple of conversations with Tony Arcangelo, and to try to really understand more about your association and organizations, and some of my takeaways. This is what I heard Tony say. Now, whether he said it or not, I'm trying to put words in his mouth, but this is what I heard. Our guys need to really make sure they're focused on working on the business versus in the business. You hear that a lot in different industries, and not just growing their business, but doing so by developing their people. And then the challenges to that was, it's hard to compete sometimes on price, right? When it gets to price. Another challenge is actually getting in front of people and having a relationship versus just kind of, airmailing in an estimate and bids, making promises versus making estimates. And then the last component of that was, it's not just B2B. There's some residential component to this as well. So I'm going to attempt to address all of that. And I'll kind of start with, we did a survey, and in the survey, we're asking salespeople, finishing contractors, what you call them, business development people, or if it's the owner, or if you actually have salespeople. And this is what they kind of tell us are some of the biggest challenges. And what I'm looking for here is kind of the 80-20 rule. This is 20% of the activities or challenges they run into that kind of covers 80% of the gambit. So the first one is, they really want to have a strategic plan, so when they finally do get to sit down with someone, they're able to frame that conversation and do it in such a way that moves it off of price and more about their performance and their service of what they do. A second one is being able to sell the difference of what we do, differentiate on something other than price, acquiring business. I'm on the third one now, in the COVID era, if you will. And then kind of the title of what we're talking about here is, how do I create more customers rather than just jobs? We give an opportunity to bid on something, and it's a $10,000 or $50,000 job, and we want it. Hey, that's great, we want it. But how can we take that job and actually convert it into a customer that has the ability to continue to give us business? And then the last thing is, how can I get in the room with the real decision makers? So that's kind of what the salespeople were telling us. I kind of told you what Tony was telling me. Now a little bit about what the owners are talking about. So these are the 5 times when clients reach out to us for their help, and see if any of this resonates with you. So the first one is when leadership is tired of being stressed out due to the uncertainty of month-to-month revenues. Right? Hey, we keep making that on how we're making it. It's kind of hard to sleep at night. The second one is when they want to optimize their sales efforts, but they've tried things in the past, whether it's sales training or coaching or whatever. They're not really sure if it worked, or they're sure it didn't work, but it's hard to put an ROI, return on investment, on that investment that they made. The third one is when salespeople are telling the owners that the biggest challenge is not having enough time to do everything. So they're very, very busy, but the owners are not so sure that they're productive because they don't have a clear line of sight in what they're actually doing. The fourth one, leadership has determined that the key is new business development, but they know that to actually accelerate into new business development, it's going to require change, either in structure, strategy, or execution, or they're not likely to succeed. And then the last one, hey, the pandemic has changed things. It has continued to be changed, at least for a period of time. So that's kind of three different perspectives. When you're asking your question, am I in the right place? I hope that you are. If you're a finishing contractor, we're going to give you today 5 actionable steps that you can go out and start. Some of you can implement it, right now on your own. Some of you may need help with that, right? And that's kind of what we do, is we help people with that. But before we get to that, I'm going to spend about half of my presentation time kind of framing out what we're talking about. That way, I think it's a lot easier to digest these 5 actionable steps that I'm going to give you. And then we're going to open it up to the Q&A. And so it's usually a good practice is as you're thinking about something, go ahead and put it in the Q&A session. We'll unmute you later, as Jeremy said, but at least you kind of got your spot in there. And by the way, if anybody wants the slide deck, just shoot us an email. I'll give you my information at the end, or call us. We'll send you the slide deck, and the same thing as a recording. I think it's going to take us about a week before we have the recording ready to go. But we can, if you got anybody else in your organization that you want to see what we're doing here, then we're more than happy to share that with them. So measures of success and kind of where we're going. Something I learned a few years ago in the healthcare industry, because I had a health scare, was there's 2 types of problems in the healthcare industry. And they're the same 2 types of problems that we have in sales or in business development. They're acute problems and they're chronic problems. So when we say acute, we mean it's painful and it's present. It hurts and it hurts right now. And it's a symptom of a chronic issue, because the chronic issue is the underlying cause and it continues. And unless you fix the chronic issue, it's going to show up as acute. So if you have an acute problem, and I'm going to show you what those are in just a second, you have a chronic issue. But you may have a chronic issue and it may not be acute yet, but it will be. And the problem with that is if you don't catch it early enough, same as in the healthcare, it may be too late. And of course, we're talking about for your business, not for your physical body. But back to the acute problems, when you think about acute issues, the things that we're looking at there are things like total sales, or your close rate, or your sales cycle, or how you doing sales versus plan. Those are acute, right? It's right now. It's on top of us. And if it's not good, it's pretty painful. So when people reach out to us, when people like you say, hey, we need your help, I'm going to share with you something that's called the 5 drivers. I didn't come up with this. It has everything to do with mindset. It comes from a guy by the name of David Bayer. But I've studied this for a long time, and David was the best at simplifying this. And I love to get things simple. That's powerful when you can simplify things. So kind of working in reverse, the 5th driver are the results, right? These are the actual outcomes that we're getting. And those outcomes are in direct relationship to the actions that we're doing as business people, or our salespeople are doing. So I was sharing with you earlier, like the results can be sales, close rate, those type things. Lag indicator means it's happened after the event. We can go back and measure things like a sales report, okay, or like the score of a game. Game's over, right? Now we can get these lagging indicators. But when we go to the actions, we're saying, okay, what are the actions that the salesperson should be doing that's going to lead to the results that we actually want? Because if you haven't identified that, and I tell you, probably half the people that call in for my help have not identified what the lead activities are. And so those are things like, well, the number of, we call them touch points. A touch point is reaching out and touching a prospect. You touch them with an email, a text, a phone call, or face-to-face. Those are all touches. So these are samples of lead indicators, and they're not right for every business or every industry. I'm just trying to give you an example of the type of lead activity so you can compare that versus lag indicators. So the number of sales calls that you make, how many opportunities you have in your pipeline, the number of leads that you've generated over a period of time, or the average deal stage. These are all lead activities. These are the actions. So where we're kind of going with that is we've done some research that I'm going to share with you. I think it kind of helped frame some of the topics we're talking about. We asked a lot of salespeople where they spend their time, and specifically we said in the last 60 days, where are you spending your time? And we're going to plot them on a graph. So we started with this kind of business school one-on-one graph. So the y-axis, the vertical axis, these are the activities. If they're high, then they're high value activities. And if they're low on the scale, they were low value activities, almost like worthless. Kind of, some of them are. And then on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, these are activities that are, we call it customer interfacing. In front of the customer, all we really mean by that is real time. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. It could be virtual, it could be a phone call, it could be a text. We just mean it's real time. And then over on the far right of the horizontal axis, we're saying that doesn't happen in front of the customer. It's not real time. And then we did that, we're able to kind of box that off into 4 boxes. Quadrant 1, top left, you can see quadrant 2, 3, and 4. So what we're trying to say is quadrant 1, right? Those are high value activities that are also happening in front of the customer. So think about it this way. That's where we want our business development people to be. Whether it's you've hired somebody to do that, that's where you want them to be with the bulk of their time, developing business. Quadrant 2, right, are the, as you can see, equally high value activities that don't happen in front of the customer. So I think you guys can kind of follow that what the different quadrants are. Now I want to kind of give you some examples of what we mean in each quadrant. So quadrant 1, high value activities that happen in front of the customer, these are the type things we're talking about. Prospecting, establishing a relationship, a needs discovery, we're asking questions, we're actually presenting our solutions. All that is quadrant 1, high value activities that happen in front of the customer. Quadrant 2 activities, here's an example of those. It's the preparation for quadrant 1. It's the research, it's the planning, it's the rehearsing, it's creating the sales collateral that you need to do quadrant 2. Quadrant 3, again, low value activities, but happen in front of the customer. Unfortunately, the first one on the list is the donut drop. Usually if you guys are unmuted, I get a chuckle out of this because we all know what that means. We've all done it. We all continue to do it. The donut drop is when we show up at a customer's place of business or other job site, and we're just dropping them off donuts. We didn't even meet with the decision maker. We probably didn't meet with anybody. There's nothing wrong with dropping off donuts unless you think that's going to win you business, because it doesn't win business. Nothing wrong with it, but that doesn't win business. So remember where we are, quadrant 3, low value activities that do happen in front of a customer. The main ones that we see are we're not meeting with the right people. So we're not meeting with the decision makers, or we're meeting with the decision makers, but we're having the wrong conversation. Or maybe we're having the right conversation, but it's out of context. It's too soon to be talking about certain things. That's quadrant 3. That's where you really don't want to be. In other words, it's a missed opportunity. We're in front of the customer and didn't do anything productive. Oh, and then down at the bottom, customer service and technical service. For a lot of your salespeople, business development people, that's part of their responsibility. So I'm not saying they shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that's not a selling activity, right? Customer service, checking invoices, pricing, showing them how something works. That's all important stuff, but it's not selling. And in quadrant 4, where we really don't want to be, low value, doesn't happen in front of the customer, windshield time, right, to get from customer to customer, administrative work that's not directly related to selling, internal meetings, checking email, those type things. So where I want to take you now is the breakout. So when we surveyed a bunch of salespeople, we asked them where they spend their time. Quadrant 1, only 10% of their time is in quadrant 1. The high value activities happen in front of the customer. We could stop right there and go, well, that's the problem, right? Well, yeah, that's an acute problem. Let me lay the rest of it out for you. Quadrant 2, they spend about 20% of their time. Quadrant 3, 30%. Quadrant 4, 40%. So we're kind of where we don't want them to be is where they're spending most of their time, but where we really want them to be in quadrant 1, they're not spending very much time there. So those, when I'm saying quadrant 1, those are the actions that we want them to be doing. So the problem is they're not spending enough time in quadrant 1. If they are in quadrant 1, they're not talking to the right people, or they're not having the right conversations, or it's out of context. So again, most organizations, I'd say most, half probably have not identified what those actions are. So that's step one. But if you do identify what those actions are, if they're not doing it, there's a reason why the salespeople are not doing it, right? So let me kind of move over there for a little bit. When we're seeing that the reps, that we're not doing the right actions, then leadership, the owners, the executives start thinking, well, it's a work ethic issue. My guys are just lazy. Or there's a lack of accountability. We're not holding them accountable. Or it's time management. Or it's just a lack of talent. My guys are not that good. I love this quote by author John Gardner. He says, most ailing organizations have developed a functional blindness to their own defects. He goes on to say that they're not suffering because they cannot resolve their problems, but because they cannot see their problems. So that's true for your customers, right? And we're going to kind of get into that a little bit deeper. But it's also true for my customers, right? The people that are on this call can have the same thing. Because if you think this is the problem, then it leads to these type of solutions. Like, first of all, let's just demand more. If the guys are lazy, let's demand more. If it's accountability, let's buy a CRM system like Salesforce.com to solve the problem. Or let's have accountability meetings, have weekly meetings, that we're making sure the guys are doing what they're doing. Or if they're just not good enough, if it's a skill set issue, well, let's hire some superstars, or let's get some training for our people. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but before I do, I want to show you this graph. And so think about this graph. On the vertical axis here is how receptive a buyer is to meeting with you or any of your people, right? How receptive. They're very high, yeah, come on in, or they're very low. And on the horizontal axis here, it has everything to do with how satisfied they are. How satisfied they are with their current vendor, supplier, drywall, contractor, whatever it is. And so on the far left, when they're satisfied with the existing situation, they're not meeting with new people. But the more unsatisfied they get, all the way to the point of crisis, then yeah, absolutely. It's a lot easier. They're more receptive to taking a meeting with somebody. So when I show this slide, most salespeople kind of jump to, it's like, okay, I get it. I see what you're saying. Is I need to find the people that are in crisis mode and call on them. That's not what I'm saying. And here's why I'm not saying that. So if you look at this pyramid, and this comes from Chet Holmes, he's no longer with us anymore, but a really smart guy. And I agree with this. I don't know if the numbers are exactly right, but in any industry, there's about 3%, only 3% that are looking for your services right now. So if you're a flooring contractor and you're just calling people up, going door to door, there's only about 3 out of 100 that are actually looking to do something with their floors. So there's another 6 to 7% that's maybe open to the idea. 30%, well, I wasn't thinking about it, but maybe. 30% says, I thought about it, I don't think so. And 30% is saying, I absolutely am not interested. So that leads to people trying to time the market, which is a bad idea. So I'm going to come back to this as well. So we worked really hard to make this very simple, and that's the sales process. So if you don't have a sales process, I'm telling you, this is what the buyer goes through mentally every time, every single time. It can happen really fast or it can take a while. If you have a sales process system, it's going to be similar to this. You'll kind of get what I'm talking about. So everything starts in the cloud. So in the cloud, that's where the leads are. Think about it this way. These people don't even know we exist. They're leads. We never talk to them. So we're prospecting them. We're calling them, dropping in, sending an email with the number one objective. There's other objectives, but the number one objective is to get a meeting with them. We want to meet with them, preferably face-to-face, which, by the way, the pecking order for meeting for us, our preference should always be face-to-face. Now, in the coronavirus era, a lot of people are not wanting to meet with us. Second best is virtual, like we're doing now. Third best is on the telephone. On the telephone, you don't get to see the body language. You can't see if people are engaged or not. Then email, text, the digital. The problem with all that is you don't get tone and you don't get body language. So those are the preferences. But what we're trying to do in the cloud is to get a meeting, right? When we get the meeting, then we're in the top of the funnel. We're just meeting with them. I'm going to show you in just a second. The most common mistake that salespeople make is they don't realize where they are in the sales process, and they think they're always in the bottom of the funnel. And the bottom of the funnel is when you're actually pitching your solution. And so I'm telling you, most of the people you're meeting with, and when you're meeting with them, they're not in the bottom of the funnel. And if you are, it starts this conflict. So when you're selling and they're not ready to be sold, they feel pushed. And when buyers feel pushed, they do one of two things are both bad for us. They either push back, or what most of them do is they kind of withdraw. So the conversation really slows down. They're just kind of giving you superficial answers. So think about it this way. When we finally get a meeting with someone, we don't want to go to the bottom of the funnel. We don't want to start selling right away. We're in the top of the funnel. We call the top of the funnel, we call it the qualification stage, but not for reasons you probably think. We're not talking about we're qualifying the customer, making sure we're talking to the right person, that they have a budget and they have a need. There's a time and place for that. This is not it. What this is about is they're qualifying us. For example, you're qualifying me right now. I know that. I'm aware of that. So the things that I'm doing, and I'm going to call myself out later on some of the things I'm doing now, I'll tell you why I did that later on. It's because I realized where you guys are in the sales process. The bottom of the sales process would be giving you a pitch, right, that involves price and everything else. You're not going to hear that today because you're not ready for that today, right? Nor am I. So the top of the funnel is about establishing that trust, and we define trust as two things. If you don't have both these things, they won't trust you. Likability and credibility. Likability has everything to do with your character. Credibility has everything to do with your competency, right? If you don't have both those things, people don't trust you. So we're going to kind of show you how you establish that. That's part of the 5 valid business reasons I'm going to talk to you about today, is how do you do that? So if you've been selling or doing business development for any amount of time, probably everybody on this call can tell me anecdotally how you've established trust in the past. But what we're talking about is like, how do you do that consistently? Like, how would you do that on the next call? Because if you don't have a system to do that, then we're winging it every time. And you can't achieve mastery when you're doing it different every single time. If you have a system, then you can start getting better and better and layer and getting better. But the key, back to this, is once you've got the meeting, in the top of the meeting, realize that you're trying to establish trust. You're not trying to sell them. Not yet, and you shouldn't be, because you need to diagnose before you prescribe. But you can't even diagnose unless they trust you. So we want to establish trust, and then we want to frame the conversation. So I told you guys about half my time is going to be building up to the 5 valid business reasons that your takeaway is. And the reason why is because I realize that's where I'm at, and that's where you are, right? We'll get to the rest of it in just a little bit. So once we've established that trust, then we move to the middle of the funnel. In the middle of the funnel is where we're asking a lot of questions like a consultant would do. So it's questions that are not asking of themselves. But you can't show up and start asking those questions right away, or it feels like an interrogation. That's the second most common mistake that salespeople make. The first is they show up and they throw up. They show up and they start talking about how great their company is, how great their product or services are. It's a pitch, and it's a big turnoff, and it just does not work. The second biggest mistake is showing up with an interrogation. So this is our process, right? And think about it this way. If you're not doing a very good job at prospecting to get the meeting, everybody that's on this call today, really Jeremy did a good job to get you here, right? That was the prospecting part. Now where we are right now is the top of the funnel. And quite frankly, that's where I'm going to stay today. But later on, if anybody wants to talk one-on-one, which by the way, won't cost you anything, then I'll go to the middle of the funnel and I'll have a lot of questions for you to see if I can bring value and help you figure out what's your next move that's going to help you. And if that involves me, hey, great. If it doesn't involve me, that's great too. As long as I'm helping people, I believe in that karma to come back around to help me. So we're going to be focused on really the top of the funnel, but you'll see how we use the top of the funnel as a valid business reason to get the meeting. Okay, so I told you we're going to come back to this, and this being, these are the 5 drivers. And what I shared with you was, all right, most people kind of work it in reverse. Are we getting the results that we want? If we are, most people think, that's good, we're good to go. But you may have a chronic problem that just hadn't shown up yet. So you probably should kind of figure that out. But most of the people are calling us, they've already realized either here we got a problem or we see there's a problem here. Both these are acute issues. But the chronic issue is 1, 2, and 3. It all starts with your belief system. So let me kind of just lay this out for you a little bit. I'll go through it fairly quick, but we all have a belief system, whether you're aware of it or not. And most of us are not, because it's not at a conscious level. That's the first driver. What is your belief system? So everything that's ever happened to you in your life, every experience or a story of somebody telling you about somebody else's experience, that is all retained in the brain. It doesn't mean it's in our memory, right? But the brain stored that as an experience. Now, when we start having an awareness of that, applying thinking to that, right? That's the second driver, right? We start thinking like maybe the belief system is a prospecting. Right? Well, what about prospecting? We'll start thinking about prospecting. And what most people, by the way, most salespeople do not like to cold call, as in prospecting. When they start thinking about that, they start thinking about, yeah, there's a high level of rejection. I hear about people physically getting kicked out, and that leads to the emotions. We always act or don't act 100% of the time based on emotion. And the kicker is we don't even realize it. We think we're doing it logically because we justify with rationale, right? But it's always emotion. And I can tell you what those emotions are. They're things like curiosity, things like credibility, likability, interest. These three things, beliefs, thinking, and emotions, are the chronic issues. So going back to what I said earlier is if you've identified what the salespeople should be doing and they're not doing it, it's because of the belief system. Now, here's the good news. Beliefs are nothing more than decisions. So if you want to change your results, it starts with changing and making a new decision. And then finding evidence that supports the way that decision goes. So if you think about it this way, if you're thinking based on belief system, it leads to feelings of not very happy, not very good, that's not empowering, right? That takes away from you. And so when you're not taking the proper action. However, if it is empowering, you tend to take those actions. It all comes back to this belief system. And that belief system goes pretty deep into salespeople's confidence. That's the real problem. So if people are not in quadrant one enough, then there's a technique called avoidance. There's a reason why they're not in quadrant one. And it sounds like I'm really busy taking care of my existing customers. I got a lot of technical issues I need to take care of. It's like, yeah, but I need you over here. I need you in business development if that's the role. But there's all kinds of excuses not to get there, and they don't even realize it's, well, you're afraid of it. That's the real problem. So we had an epiphany at McBrayer Associates. I've been doing this for 12 years now. As Jeremy said, I was with PPG actually for 21 years. When I left, I had 150 salespeople, direct salespeople. They reported to 12 sales managers. They reported to me. And I love that. I love being with salespeople. That's my thing. And what we found was, even if you get people the training that they need, there's something always missing, right? And the part that was missing is the tool set. You have to have the right processes, the right systems. That comes before the skill set. The skill set is a byproduct of having the right resources. And so you can see the golden arches there, because that's to remind me. There was a movie that came out about 3 years ago. It's called The Founder. It's about Ray Kroc and McDonald's. And so the real founders of McDonald's were two brothers, the McDonald brothers. But Ray Kroc's value is he realized the value in processes, systems. So think for a second about the best tasting hamburger you've ever had in your life. And you probably didn't think about McDonald's. You probably thought about Uncle Bobby's on Saturday night, right? He's not selling them, but you were starved and you ate it, and it was the best burger ever. But who sold more burgers than anybody else? It's McDonald's. And the way that they were able to do that was not hiring for the highest skill set. What they said is we need to hire for a minimum skill set. And we can do that if we have the right processes. So kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, when I'm talking to business owners, a lot of times they're saying, we're just not settled enough. I think my guy's too lazy, didn't know what he's doing, didn't have a high enough skill set. That's usually not the problem. We're not structured properly. We got to have a different strategy. We got to work on our products. It's like, that may be, that's usually not the problem. But the problem is, do you have a system, and did you give them the system? Right? Do your guys have the resources that they need at the top of the funnel to get the meetings they need to have and have the conversations that they need to have with the people they need to be having it with? And the response I normally get, I would tell you over 90% of the people that buyers, owners, executives, they're like, no, we don't have that. But we don't have what you're talking about, Jim, but isn't it the salesperson responsibility to do that? No, it's not. It's your responsibility if you're the owner or you're the executive. Think about this for a second. I played baseball at a very high level as a hitter. When you think about a major league hitter, right, they're supposed to be able to hit. It'd be the same thing with saying, well, aren't they supposed to make their own baseball bats? No, they're not. Louisville Slugger does that. They're not supposed to do that. They're supposed to be great at using the baseball bat. And I would tell you about 90% of the people admit, I don't have the baseball bat for my hitters, but aren't they supposed to make their own? No, they're not. Well, who's supposed to do that? Well, I do that for people, but that's the processes that we're talking about, the systems that you need. I'm going to share some of those with you in just a second. But the whole idea is if the sales guys have the resources that they need, then it goes back to that initial driver, the belief system, which is, man, I've got something that's going to work. If the whole mindset shifts and says, I want to do this. I'm not looking to avoid to do this. It's like having a great joke. When you got a great joke, you want to tell the joke. You know, I've told it 100 times, people laugh. When you have the right resources and you're able to share it with people, that's where you can develop mastery. You don't have to go out and hire superstar salespeople and pay them a ton of money, right? You can take the people that you have right now, give them the right processes or have somebody give it to them, and you can start getting results from that right away. That has been the missing link. I keep going back to about 90% of people say they don't have it. There's another 5% that says, yeah, we got it. And I go, okay, send it to me. And, you know, I'll do a desktop assessment and tell you how good it is or whatever. I can't find it. If you can't find it, I doubt that the salespeople have it. And then the remaining 5%, what they send me is the bottom of the funnel stuff. It's like, this is exactly what your guys should not be doing. What you're sending me that you're giving them, that's like a sales pitch. And people don't like that until they're ready for it. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? If there's only about 3% of the market that's in the market looking for a solution right now, the problem with that, it's a moving target. So most salespeople would say, yeah, I'd be okay with if 3% of the people would buy from me, or maybe 1 or 2 of those 3 would buy from me. I don't mind making 100 calls. The problem is they're moving, right? If it's a real issue, they're going to find another solution. So that's not the right solution. The good news is 80%. 80%, that's the number of potential buyers that would take a meeting with an outside seller if what you're talking about resonates with their priorities and their problems. The problem is always that these buyers have met with people like us in the past and walk away. The majority of them would say it was a total waste of my time. This person didn't bring any kind of value. They were just trying to sell me, not even listening to me. So that's what we're up against. Those that came before us have kind of given us a bad taste in buyers, in their mouth. So what we got to do is figure out, well, what would that be? What does that look like? So when decision makers actually accept a meeting with a seller, I'm giving you 6 reasons that they would meet with us. And I'm going to kind of skip to the chase here. The first 5 are reactive from our perspective, right? That's when the potential buyer is saying, well, I've got a problem with my existing contractor. I've got a problem with my existing supplier, or I just want to vet some of these type things, right? And I'm not going to walk you through all those 5. You can see them. But number 6 is when we're reaching out, when we're being proactive. And here's the takeaway on this. The clients that I work with, the salespeople that I work with will tell me, hey, Jim, when they call me, I do really good with that. I'm very, it goes back to the mindset. I'm very comfortable and my close rate is through the roof. Well, of course it is. I mean, that's like fish jumping in the boat, right? We're all pretty good when the fish, and we all want that, right? It's very seldom does that happen. And the ratio in most industries is about 20 to 1. So for every 1 customer that you win that falls in this category in the first 5, you should be picking up 20 that you reached out to, that you initiated to. So just look back in time to your last quarter, your last year, your last 3 to 5 years, and say, okay, these are customers that we won. And then figure out, like, did we initiate that or did they initiate that? Because the ratio should be about, of all those customers, about 95% should be things that we initiated. And if it's not, that's what you're leaving on the table for new business. I hope that makes sense where I'm going with that. For every one that you get that calls you, for every fish that jumps in the boat, you should have caught 20 that you're actually casting in the pond. And if that's not the ratio, it's like we're not doing a very good job in number 6 of being proactive, about having relevant information that resonates with those buyers' challenges and priorities. So kind of back to where I want to spend some time now in introducing the 5 valid business reasons. Again, it's going to really address these top 2. How do you get the meeting, and what do you talk about at the top of the meeting? I keep coming back to this because think about it like if it's a diet. Most of us have been on a diet at some point. And, you know, even if we weren't on a formal diet, we know that like there's certain things we're not supposed to be eating. Right? You can't eat fried chicken. You can't eat chocolate cake, all things I like to eat. Right? You're not supposed to eat that. It's like, okay, I don't need anybody to tell me not to eat that. I know I'm not supposed to eat that. I need somebody to tell me what I can eat. And that's kind of the top of the funnel. So salespeople start getting it pretty quick. Like, okay, I get it, Jim. I'm not supposed to be trying to sell them at the bottom of the funnel. So it's pretty clear what I'm not supposed to be talking about. Got it. Well, what am I supposed to be talking about? If I can't talk about my solutions, my services, my company, and all that, because that's kind of off limits for now, and you're saying don't start asking a bunch of questions yet, what can I talk to them about? Well, that's where we're going. That's the top of the funnel. That's the valid business reason they would meet with us. Now, I'm not into real estate. We're looking at some property on the north side of Atlanta. We're living in Atlanta now. We're on the south side. We're looking to move to the north side. Talk to a few real estate agents. So here's the one thing I've learned about real estate, and you guys know this. It's almost like a joke, right? The most important top 3 things in real estate, right? Location, location, location. When it comes to business development or just being a business owner, retaining customers and acquiring new customers. Well, by the way, Peter Drucker said that's the only reason a business exists, to acquire and retain customers. Well, the 3 most important things there, relationship, relationship, relationship. So we want that relationship. It may surprise you that the actual buyer wants a relationship as well, and they have one. It just may not be with us. So that's, you know, how do you get that relationship? If you've been in business any amount of time, you have relationships with existing customers. And you look and say, well, how do we get that? Well, I've had this guy for 15 years. Well, that's great. But how do we get the relationship with the next guy? With it not taking 15 years? How can we accelerate that? How can we be very deliberate about what we're supposed to be doing so we don't have a lot of wasted movement, and that we can kind of get them on the hook a little bit quicker? That's where we're going. Valid business reasons that people would agree to meet with you, not to buy from you. We're not asking them to buy yet. So, I mean, if you don't have any other takeaway from this webinar, it's quit selling so soon. I get a lot of friends and family. They know what I do. And they're always asking like for sales advice and stuff. And the number one thing I tell them is like, quit selling. I'm like, well, I thought that's what you did, right? That is what I did. But what I mean is like, quit pushing. You got to be able to talk to them about something else, because you got to develop trust and stuff. And you have to have enough integrity to honor that. Don't try to sell something to somebody that doesn't need it. So I realize that, right? Everybody that's on this call probably doesn't need what it is I can help you with. And I would have enough integrity to tell you that, or there's somebody who can help you better, or whatever it may be. But if you talk to enough people and you have that integrity, I mean, what you want is, I want the right customer, because I can bring incredible value to the right customer. Feel the same way. There's certain jobs you don't want, right? Because like, it's just going to be a mess. It's going to go bad. They're not going to get what they want. They're going to take too much of my time, whatever. So the model, kind of what we're looking for, is creating relevant rapport. Now, versus non-relevant rapport. Non-relevant rapport is Seinfeld talk. You guys remember the TV show Seinfeld? Remember what the show was about? This is a show about nothing. So it's small talk, Seinfeld talk, right? It's when you meet with a customer, you just met with them, and you're talking about the weather, you're talking about the ball game, or anything you see that they have in common with you right now. By the way, customers like that. They like you to break the ice, but that's about 2 or 3 minutes, not 20 to 30 minutes. So relevant rapport is when you're talking to something that actually resonates with them. So what we're trying to do at the top of the funnel, which is where I still am with you guys, right? What we're trying to do is establish our competency, our credibility, and frame the issue that you want to talk about. So this is where we're going. This is what the 5 takeaways that I want you to get from me today. These are actionable steps. I'm going to lay these out for you at a very high level. I'm not going to get into the details because we just don't have time. It would take a lot of time to lay all this out. For some of you, and for most of you, some of these, like the first one, it's just me like, oh man, I got it. I don't need anybody's help. I understand exactly what he's saying. I can go do this on my own, and I can get business with new customers like right away. Some of these others, you may be able to execute on your own. You may want to have a free call with me, and I can help you get along with that. And then for some of you, I hope they're saying, we won't help with that. It's a good idea, but we want to hire your services to help us with that. So here are the 5. Strategic introduction. I'm going to go over that in a little bit more detail, which can lead to a capabilities briefing. That's number 2. The third one is a demo, an assessment, a site inspection. The fourth one is an executive roundtable. The executive roundtable is one that for me, on B2B customers, not B2C, but on B2B customers, that's the one that's working the best this year. It's almost like if you saw somebody coming off the lake, another fishing analogy, and they call a whole stringer full. You're asking, what were they hitting on, right? Well, I'm going to tell you what they're hitting on right now is number 4, the executive roundtable. And then number 5 is market intelligence. So with that, we'll start with the first one, strategic introduction. So this kind of goes back to we're prospecting and we're trying to get a meeting, and just cold calling people, the success rate of getting a meeting. Now, this is not the success rate of closing a customer, of them just agreeing to talk to you when you're cold calling. It's about 0.5 to 5%. And that doesn't mean don't do that. You have to keep planting seeds, right? So there's a certain amount of cold calling that you have to do. The second step is what we call personalization. And personalization means if you can take a little bit of time before you reach out to somebody to do 3 to 5 minutes worth of research to be able to personalize your message, then your success rate of getting the meeting jumps from 0.5% to 10 to 15%, right? So, the personalization are things about what's going on with a particular job, or somebody that, something we have in common, a common interest, a challenge that they're having. But the last one, right? Direct introductions, we call it a strategic introduction. The success rate is 15 to 20%. So let me explain to you what that is. You probably already know, got a good idea. But just imagine for a second that I'm trying to get a meeting with Bob, right? So Bob, I know who Bob is. I want to do business with him, but he doesn't know me from Adam. But a current customer of mine is Joe. And Joe's a great customer. He thinks the world of me. And Joe has a relationship with Bob. So a transfer of credibility or strategic introduction is just me asking Joe, would he introduce me to Bob? That's all it is. It's that simple. Now, what I do that works very well for me is when I'm asking for that strategic introduction and they agree to it, which, by the way, if I'm doing a good job for them, it's like 80% of the people agree to do that and actually follow through. What I do is actually create an email. I write the email that I want Joe to send to Bob. And I send it to Joe and say, you can just copy and paste this, edit, change it, whatever you want. And it basically says, hey, Jim's a really good guy. He's helped us with this specifically. We got great results. I know you got some of the same challenges. You want to talk to him. And then what I ask, get my names mixed up, but what I'm asking Joe to do to introduce me to Bob is to send him an email, send him that email, copy and paste it, and copy me. So I know when he sent it, because it's not always the same day, right? They got other pressing matters. But I usually wait about 24 hours, and then I follow up with the guy that I want to meet and basically said, hey, listen, I know that Joe introduced us. I'm just following up and see, if it makes sense for us to have an introductory call. And if they don't, I'll send them something a second time. And I won't go more than about 3 times with a strategic introduction. But usually it takes more than one time to kind of follow up with that. And if they don't want to meet, that's fine, right? We're not trying to sell everybody. You're not going to sell everybody. That's a strategic introduction. And what a good rule of thumb is you do got a customer that's ever paying you a compliment, or your company or your products a compliment, your knee-jerk reaction should be, well, why do you say that? Specifically, why are you saying that? How do you measure that we did such a good job? Right? Where we're trying to take this is kind of just like, yeah, you guys have helped me with this. This has really been great. And then who else could benefit from our services? Who else do you know that could benefit? Well, I know Susan, she could probably benefit. Would you mind making a strategic introduction since you just told me how good a job we're doing for you? I'll write the email for you. We need to get in the habit of doing that. And of course, when we're following up with whoever we're trying to meet with, then they're looking for, okay, the reason I'm on this call with you guys is Tony B did a strategic introduction for me with Tony D. And so I started talking, and Tony told me that. Tony D said, the only reason I'm talking to you is because Tony B said I should. And the only reason Tony B did it is because I asked him to do it. And I think that I brought enough value to Tony B that he says, yeah, I'd be willing to do that. And I didn't know I was asking for Dark Angelo at the time. I was just asking who else could benefit from what I'm talking to you about. And he told me about the FCA. That's how I got here, right? So when you're having that meeting, just like with Tony, it's like, okay, I'll have a meeting. What are we going to talk about? What's a capabilities briefing typically? It can be other things, but that leads to the second one, the capabilities briefing. What is a capabilities briefing? Well, what it's not is it's not a sales pitch, right? It's just I'm letting you know what we do. I can be a valid resource, a hip pocket resource for you. So if anything like this ever pops up either for you or for one of your members, then you guys have a pretty good idea of what I do and what I help with. It's not buying anything. So that's the reason we're not trying to sell. When people give you the typical objections, it's, hey, we don't have a budget to do something like that, or already got a guy to do something like that. I'm not asking you to buy from me. I know better than that. I'm just asking you to meet with me, right? Let's just start a relationship. I'm not going to be pushy. And you guys, hopefully you've already seen that. I'm not going to push. So we're not trying to sell anything. We're just trying to start a conversation, frame the conversation. All I was trying to do with Tony is get to this point, right? It's steps. That's a capabilities briefing. And a capabilities briefing doesn't have to be formal. Sometimes people get hung up on that and say, do I have to do a PowerPoint, Jim? No, you don't do a PowerPoint. Sometimes it's appropriate to do a PowerPoint. If you're in a boardroom or something like that, if there's multiple people, you probably want to put it on a projector. If it's just a handful of people, maybe you got handouts. If it's on a job site, maybe you're writing it in the dirt, right? But it's still the same format. It may not be the same vehicle. And the most important part of this capabilities briefing is usually ranges from maybe 6 to 10 slides if you're doing a slideshow type thing. But the most important one is called the win slide. Not W-I-N, W-H-E-N. It's when people like them reach out to people like you. This should look familiar to you. This is the third slide that I showed you when we were talking today, right? Because I wasn't trying to sell you. I'm trying to establish my capability, my competency. And I'm saying when people reach out for me is when these things are going on in their business. Now, what you're looking for is the 80-20 rule. Remember Pareto's principle? I don't have time to go down the 100 different times people run out with 1,000. But what's the 3 to 5? It covers about 80% of it. So with that being said, about 80% of you, one of these things should have resonated with you. I don't mean you're going to take action and won't even talk to me, but it's like, okay, yeah, that's something we've been talking about. It's something that you kind of got in my head. So that's the second one, right? The capabilities briefing. Again, it's a lot more detailed than that. If you want to know more about how to build one out, I'll share that with you. So the third one is a site inspection, a demo, or an assessment. So notice the picture that I have here. That's supposed to be a professional pool player. So here's the story behind my epiphany as it came to this. A Saturday afternoon, I just got a Subway sandwich and I sat down in my recliner, put it on ESPN. I thought it was a football game. Started eating my sandwich, comes back from a commercial. It's not the football game. It's a professional pool hustler, right? They're playing pool. It's been a long time since I played pool, but I mean, I understand the basic 9-ball, right? I get it. So I'm too busy eating my sandwich to change the channel I'm watching. And this guy's got this easy shot. I mean, he's got like a foot in the corner pocket. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I can, I'm not good at pool. I can make that shot, at least 80% of the time. Most people probably make it 100% of the time. This guy's taking all day. He keeps walking around the table like, that's the one you're going to knock in. What are you doing? What are you taking so much time? So finally he knocks it in and, the cue ball bounces off a couple of the edges of the table, the railings, and the cue ball ends up, he's got another easy shot. He's got like 8 inches, side pocket, like, okay, knock it in, man. I'm eating the sandwich, right? Knock it in. Again, he walks around the table, he keeps looking, takes forever, knocks it in, cue ball goes like English on it, spins everywhere, ends up with another easy shot. As you guys know, he ends up just running the table, right? And so it finally dawned on me, like the difference between a professional pool player and myself is he always ends up with an easy shot because he's working the cue ball. Now, I wasn't even thinking about where I'm going to leave the cue ball. I was just thinking about knocking in the next shot. It's the same principle in selling. It's the same thing. Like whatever you're working on right now, like I got a job. I got this $20,000 job that I'm doing. Okay, that's great. Now we're going to get into the operations of doing the job, but your sales mind should be, where am I leaving the cue ball to turn this job into a customer? What's the next thing that they got? Well, I don't even know what the next thing is. I'm not talking about what's the next job. You don't know that yet. But what's your next excuse? What's your next valid business reason to get in front of them? And you got to do it now. You got to set that now. It could be something as simple as, when we're done with stage 2 of the project, or at some point, I want to get back. I want to have a meeting with you, face-to-face, virtual, on the phone, something on the job site to review how we're doing. It's like, okay, that sounds pretty good. It usually sounds pretty good. Not many contractors are saying, I want to talk about how I'm doing, right? And I want to make sure I fully understand why you decided to go with me, which, by the way, we always want to ask when we didn't get a job, why did we not win the job? Of course, what we're always expecting to hear was price. And that's usually what you do here, whether it's true or not. Whether it's true or not, why would they say that? Because it's easy. That's easy for them to tell you that you just want the low bid guy. But it's not always the case. And they don't want to tell you the real reason why. So they usually don't. But when you do win a job, right, you're the winner. Ask them, hey, I think I know why you awarded the job to me, but I need you to tell me why. Because we talked about a lot of things other than price. So other than price, why did you do business with us? And what that's going to tell you is these are things you better deliver on. And it may not be what you thought it was. I'm going to tell you over half the time, it's not what you thought it was. There's an old saying that if you listen to your customers, they'll tell you what business you're really in. So that's when we find out what's the real reason they bought from us. That's when we talk to the operational side, the field side of things, and going, hey, listen, these are the top 2 reasons they gave us that job. We've got to do well on these things. Well, yeah, but what's really important is, no, right? I know that may be the average of what's most important to most people, but for this customer, so we know why customers buy. They buy for their own reasons, not for ours. We got to know what those reasons are, so we make sure we deliver on those things. And that's we call it a bounce meeting. That's our bounce meeting. We need to go ahead and schedule the bounce meeting beforehand, right? One of the biggest frustrations in the finishing contracting industry is these customers will have us chasing their tail. They'll send you work and say, I need you to do a takeoff, I need you to do an estimate, I need you to do a bid on this project. And they usually, they tell us email or tell us on the phone call or whatever. When we talk to them, what we should be doing is, if it looks like it's in our wheelhouse, like, yeah, I'm more than willing to do that. But right now, I'm asking for the bounce meeting now. So I'm going to go out and do what you're asking me to do. I don't know if you realize it or not. It's going to take me several hours. More than happy to do that. But I would like to meet with you before I go do that. Right? So I can really understand and help you figure out what's really important to you about this job. It's not as easy as asking customers what's so important to you, because they don't know. They don't know. Right? We've got to get deeper than that and ask deeper questions to figure out help them figure out what's really important to them. It's what I call the hidden problems that they're not thinking about, that we help them discover by asking questions. You won't always get that meeting. Then that can help you prioritize, well, who you're going to do work for and who you're not. Now, granted, if you just got free time on your hands, you're probably going to do a bid for everybody that asks. But at some point, you're going to have enough business to say, I don't have enough time to be chasing this job. I probably bid 30 bids for this guy and I never win one. Well, how much time are you spending with them? Now, I'm not saying just quit them. I'm saying go back and ask, can I have a face-to-face on the job site with you? If they won't give you that, then the second thing we're looking for is, okay, once I go do this, I want to present it to you face-to-face or virtual, or at least over the phone, right? And so it's one of the biggest complaints I hear from contractors is like, I'm doing all this bid work. I can't even get in the room with them. You don't understand. They won't even let me meet. I do understand. I understand fully. And it's deliberate. What they're doing is deliberate, right? Maybe they just needed 3 bids, right? Maybe they don't intend to give you anything. So anyway, this is where we're getting at, is that we call it the bounce meeting, right? So the bounce meeting is really identifying why they would agree to meet with us anyway. And then that's what we're going to review with them. And when we're reviewing that with them, of course, what we're hoping is we're doing a really good job in that area. It's so important to them. And if we are, it makes it so easy for us to ask for, well, what else you got going on? You know, and if it's a B2B customer, maybe there's an internal project manager that you can talk to. Okay, so the fourth valid business reason, executive roundtables. So executive roundtables, once upon a time, we were in the industrial revolution, our economy was. Then we're in the information age. Now we're in what's called the connection economy. When you think about the connection economy, think about Uber, right? What does Uber do? It connects people. It connects drivers to people that need a ride. So that's the idea behind the executive roundtable. So we're asking usually a high caliber, high level people at different companies to show up and have a meeting. And all we're doing is facilitating the meeting. We're not giving them a pitch. We may have a 5-minute kind of framing the conversation, but we're trying to pull these people together. And there's 2 reasons that they'll show up for these meetings. The second reason is, what's the topic? What are we talking about? But the number 1 reason is who else is going to be there. And so that's the reason I'm saying, like, if you're inviting executive VPs or senior project managers, then you're not inviting people below that level or above that level. If you're inviting owners, it's only owners. It's not their substitute, right? Getting people in the same area to have those conversations. The value to us is we're the ones that brought them together. We're facilitating, and we can hear, right? Because there's conversations and we're facilitating, and we're looking for, where can we help? Where can we bring value? Sometimes you bring value, you don't get paid for it. That's okay. That's how you start building that relationship. This is what they've been biting on best for me for the last year. Just a little while back, there was 12 finishing contractors in Atlanta that I invited to do an executive roundtable. You guys know how busy you are, right? This was about a 2.5-hour meeting. I told them it would. I had an anchor, and that was an existing customer. And so I was telling them, hey, Bill's going to be there. Well, all these people knew of each other. They didn't really know each other. They compete somewhat, overlap in segments, but not really directly. All 12 of them showed up. 12 for 12 were these owners. And then I went around the room. I did like 5 minutes, and I said, hey, I want everybody to introduce yourself. Give us your name, what company you're with, how long you've been there, like when you founded or whatever. And the main thing I want to hear from you, why did you come? Why did you show up? And to a person, they all said some semblance of the same thing, which was, I came because everybody else was going to be here. Not because I was going to be there, but I'm the one that put the party together. I'm the host. It's very, very valuable. And following up with that is, where the fortunes in the follow-up for us. And then the last one I want to talk to you about is marketing tail. This works with residential B2C as well as B2B. And the whole idea is, if you think about, this is a marketing term that's called the long tail versus the bulkhead. The bulkhead, this is what we and all our competitors are doing. This is what we're offering. These are our products. This is our service. This is our pricing. That's where everybody is. The long tail is in the finer messaging, right? The messaging that everybody else is talking about is in the bulkhead. The long tail is the messaging nobody's talking about, but is essential to the buyer. It's just they haven't discovered it yet. And you say, well, how can that be so important if they haven't discovered it yet? So I love this quote by Henry Ford. You got the guy that started the Model T. He said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. But people don't know what they want until you show it to them. That was Steve Jobs. So to kind of put all this together before we go to the Q&A, there's a book that came out within the last decade, I think. It's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. And I believe if you read a book and you walk away with one idea, it was worth reading the book. So here's the one idea that I thought was really, really powerful. So you got a red ocean, you got a blue ocean. The red ocean is where all the competition is. It's where you are. It's where all the customers are. It's where all the fish are. So imagine you got all these boats, fishermen up here. They're all fishing in the same fishing hole because that's where the fish are. They're fishing with the same bait, and it's red because it's bloody, meaning the price. The price is pretty low. It's pretty bloody. So the idea is we have to create a blue ocean. So the great thing about a blue ocean is there is no competition over there. You're creating it. The bad news is there's no customers either. You have to draw the fish over. You have to draw the customers over. And you do that with an idea by messaging, talking to them about something that's super important to them. They just didn't think about it because they didn't think anybody like you offered that or any of your competitors. Let me just give you a quick example of what I was talking about, some mattress industry. Decades ago, we all bought the mattress by going to the big department stores. And there was like 2 or 3 times, you know, holidays during the year when like 75% off. That's when we were buying mattresses. It really put the squeeze on the mattress manufacturer. So one mattress manufacturer said, you know what, we're going to go direct. We're going to open our own brick and mortar, sell direct to the public, and we'll see if that works. Well, you know it worked because now there's multiple. He created a blue ocean. It worked like crazy. And then all the boats came over. All the competition, maybe not all, but a lot of the competition came over and they got bloody again. Right? So then what's the next blue ocean? Well, I think the next one was the foam mattress. Foam mattress had to be a big hit. You know, you go online now and look, there's all kinds of, then most of them are online, right? Foam mattresses. So then that becomes bloody. And then, you know, who can think of the next creative messaging of what customers really want that they don't even know that they want? So we were in the market to buy a mattress about 2 years ago. And the questions that the mattress manufacturer had been asking up to that point is what's important to you in a mattress? But then somebody figured it out trying to create a blue ocean and actually said, what's important to you about sleeping? What's real important about your sleep? Well, we live in Atlanta. And except for today and the day before, we've had the air conditioning on pretty much every day of the year. We don't want to sleep hot. We want to sleep cool. And so one of these mattress manufacturers came out with a little tagline and said, don't sweat the bed, right? Play on words versus don't wet the bed, don't sweat the bed. And so if you had asked me before that, like, Jim, you're going to look for a mattress, what's important to you about a mattress? I'd have said the same messaging that they're saying in the red ocean, right? You know, firm, not too firm, durability, you know, I guess that's about it. But if somebody's coming to you saying, well, how important is it to sleep cool? Like, that's probably the most important thing. Why didn't you say that? I didn't think mattress company had anything to do with me sleeping cool. I thought it was all about the air conditioning. No, we can do things with the mattress to make you sleep cooler. That's what I'm getting at. When you can move off that, you change the conversation. And all this happens in the top of the funnel, right? Imagine that you're talking to a residential homeowner that's thinking about having the exterior of their house painted. How often do they do that? Well, you're doing it every day. They do it, what, every 5 years, every 10 years maybe, right? So they have what we call loose buying criteria. And when they have loose buying criteria, the default criteria is always price, because that's what they know. That's really easy to figure out. A paint job is a paint job is a paint job, right? Same thing with where you're doing flooring or whatever it may be. So what's the difference? Well, there can be a huge difference. But rather than telling you how we're so different, let me kind of share some things with you and help you figure out what's important to you. Then we start moving to the middle of the funnel. Okay, so I'm wrapping it up, going to move into the Q&A. And again, going back, what I just went through in the last 20 minutes or so is what I set up before that of talking about how important it is when you're at the top of the funnel, that what you're trying to do is create likability, talking about the things that would resonate with your audience. And then the other thing is competency, that you really understand that. And then in addition to that, then we moved into, let me give them something that they can take right now, at least as strategic introductions, and start using right now to start bringing more business their way. So with that, we'll move into the Q&A. And by the way, that's my email address and my phone number. That's my cell phone number. If anybody wants this PDF, I'll send it to you. Shoot us an email. We'll get it off to you, and we'll get you the recording as well. Just shoot us an email. Hey, Jeremy, we got any questions?
We do not have any questions in chat yet, but everyone, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and I'll see and unmute you. And also just an FYI, sorry, my voice just left. Jim mentioned that we will have the recording of this live talk available within a week.
So Jim, thank you very much for that information today. I think I think there's a lot of great things there. I've got a question for you while we might be waiting for a few questions to come in. As we talked many times here about this, is that it seems like in sales, for whether it's construction or a lot of things, every sale is new, right? Nothing is, we can't go make such an imprint on somebody that they just automatically were the person. But it seems like that's the way it goes. But it sure seems like that kind of process could be created. In other words, like residual income, how can we create residual sales? And that's really what we're talking about through this whole thing is, well, how can we position ourselves? We already know the process in our industry, or many people do, on, okay, there's a job out there. I got to go do all these things, a lot of what you talked about today. This is the way I approach it. And then I get the result. I may get the award. I may not get the award. But then the next one comes up. It's like getting up and making your bed every day, right? If we could make it once and it was made every day, that would be great. But the fact is that we have to go ahead, unless we have some kind of mechanical help to do it, we have to go do it again. And in sales, and specifically in this industry, I really believe there's a way to be able to generate recurring sales without having to work as hard. And I know that sounds crazy, but that really led us to have these discussions. What is the one thing that you could provide the participants today, that the one thing, if you told them, look, you need to do this or stop doing this, that would get you closer to recurring sales? And I'm going to go on, because the reason I answer this is, as we did stuff as an organization up in Washington, I realized that we needed to be an asset, a resource to the legislative people up in Washington. Nobody ever gone to them and said, hey, we're here as a resource. Everybody went there and said, this is what we want, and you should listen to us and give us these things. When we started taking the, hey, we're a resource for you, it changed things. And then we started getting phone calls from them, and then it created those relationships. So again, what is the one thing that you would say that they should do or shouldn't do that you think they're probably doing right now?
So that's a great question, and that is the question. So if you think about your business, everybody has both of what we just talking about. You have customers. You have some, I know you do. You've got some customers that they're sending you business already. It is recurring, but you probably have a lot that's not. To Tony's point, is like, how do you make that happen? And so the common denominator, right? When you have that with just the jobs you're estimating, it's the relationship. If you have a relationship, right, then you get last look. I mean, has that ever happened to you guys before? Do you ever get a phone call saying, hey, you're not the low bid guy, but if you want to match this, we'll do business. Well, that tells you there's a note. They want to buy from you. And it's because of the relationship, but it's either a relationship because they have a trust that you're going to do the work. They know you won't overcharge. It's different for every customer, but then it gets back to, how do I do that, right? How do I form that relationship? And it's old school. You got to get in front of them, right? That's the main thing, is you've got to spend time with them. Like, Jim, you don't understand coronavirus. Okay, I get it. Some customers will, just because one customer says we're not meeting with anybody, doesn't mean every customer feels that way. Some people will meet with you, but you may feel like, I don't want to meet with them face to face for health reasons. The second best way to do that is this. It's a virtual call. If you can't do the virtual call or face to face, then the phone call. Kind of moving down the pecking order, if you will. But that's the simplest thing I could tell you, Tony. It's all about the relationship, and the relationship is spending time with them. And then it gets to what I spent all of this hour with, of saying, well, what do I talk to them about? What do I do? How do I become that resource? And it was the thing that those are the 5 valid business reasons that I was laying out for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Just an FYI, I gave everyone the ability to talk, so you could just unmute to ask any questions if you have any. Also, Jim, we had a comment from Peter Graham, who has stepped off, but he was thanking you for your excellent information, looks like. So.
Okay.
Do we have any questions? I know we're running up against time, so does anyone have any questions?
All right, well, with that, we definitely are still having communications with Jim and his group. There's a lot of things that are happening right now with some platforms that FCA is working on that I think we're going to be able to utilize some of the information Jim has and things like that. So, Jim, will be, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, this is Tony B. I just want to make a comment. Again, I think, Jim, you did a great job. We appreciate that. How you doing? And I think one of the things that, like, and Jim mentioned it earlier, that's hard, is sometimes admitting to ourselves that maybe we don't have everything in place that it takes to get done what we want to achieve, right? So I think that's the first thing we have to do, as contractors is admit we're really where we are, right? And convince ourselves that we do want to change what we're doing to make a difference, right? And I do want to make a comment too about the one thing you said about what Mr. Ford said about people don't know what they want until you show it to them. I'm in a situation where I'm kind of doing something a little bit new with something out of the box, and it is interesting to get people to come around to see something different. So what Jim's been saying is very important, and that whole thing about the relationship thing and getting somebody that you know to give an intro, we can't be afraid to ask people for that, to what you said, right? And the other thing you said, I heard you before on something else you said was, again, don't be afraid to follow up 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Sometimes the guy's just busy, right? And as painful as it is to do the follow-up calls and not get a response, you're not really losing anything, especially if it's a customer that you may not get anyways. So I do appreciate your comments today and your information.
Tony, in most industries, it takes 5 to 12 touch points just to get a meeting. 5 to 12. 44% of people give up after 1. And the reason why they give up, the number one reason why they give up is they don't want to be a pest, right? They think they're bothering somebody. If they were interested, I called them. If they were interested, they'd call me back, right? Wrong. That's a mindset issue. That's not true. They got other priorities, but they may be interested, right? The second reason they don't follow up more than once is they don't have a system to do it. They don't have the messaging. So it's weak messaging. It's like, hey, call me back. I'm just checking in. We've all been there before. It's kind of a lazy man's way of doing it, and it's not very effective. You got to be making impressions when you're reaching out, leaving messages, sending emails. That tells them a little bit more, establishes your credibility a little bit better, so they want to reach out or respond.
Absolutely. It's part of that belief thing you said earlier, right? It's what we believe. We're being a pest, but we're not really being a pest, right? It's what we believe, though, that causes us not to follow up or not to do things properly moving forward.
Yeah. Thanks, B, and Tony, and thanks for introducing me to Tony D.
I'm glad I did.
Excellent. Well, thanks again. Thanks for taking the time out to be able to do this. And I do believe, actually, Jim, you could probably close real quick, that we do have a promotion. I know you were working with Jeremy on how we are going to get that to somebody. So maybe you guys could explain real quick on how we're going to follow up with that.
I'll tell you a little bit about what it is, and then Jeremy, you can tell us, how we're doing it, how we're going to implement it. But what we're offering is we have an online program. It's videos as well as some written script and everything else, and it's called the Sales Success System. Strategic Selling System. It's a $2,000 value. We sell it for $2,000, and we're giving it away. There's no cost to FCA or to you guys. And Jeremy, I'll let you handle it from there. I don't know if it's a raffle or how you guys are planning on telling me who the winner is, but we'll send it to them.
Sure. And talk about putting your money where your mouth is, right? We are going to be raffling this off based on everyone who attended today's call. And then we will reach out to the winners within the next week. And then we'll get them all set up. We'll get them connected with Jim and get them set up for what looks to me to be a pretty great program. So we're pretty excited about that, and thanks again, Jim, for offering that.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Okay, guys, everybody, thanks for attending today. Hopefully you got some great stuff out of it. Jim, we appreciate what you shared with us, and we look forward to some further interactions with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.